Hello, I'm David Mandy, President of O&M Partners in New York. I want to welcome everyone to the HealthSpace Data Systems Town Hall webinar. HealthSpace trades on the CSE, under the ticker symbol HS. Again, CSE, Canadian Stock Exchange, under the symbol HS. For those who are new to these broadcasts, we like to think of O&M as the link between the investing public and public companies. And in the past time, these groups passed each other like ships in the night. It's very hard to identify. Our digital roadmap has enabled us to keep pace with the tremendous changes in investor demographics and how they receive information. We want this broadcast to answer all of your questions. Questions can be easily answered by going to the question portal of GoToWebinar or by emailing us. For any questions remain unanswered, we'll follow up in a timely manner after the call. For those who have dialed in with your phone, the only way you'll be able to hear our pre-recorded introductory presentation by Doug Loud is on your computer speakers. If that's not possible, you'll be able to hear the main presentation after about 8 minutes. So I hope you'll please stay tuned. Before we turn to our host, I'd like to introduce our special guest speaker, Doug Loud, Executive Director of Greystone Asset Management. It's a firm specializing in the exploration and production companies involved with gold, silver, copper, as well as very much involved medical technology companies. Doug recently joined O&M Partners and is as an advisor. He has extensive experience with dealing with public companies and applies his rigor to the current financial markets and really helps us crafting the messages for investors, particularly non-deal investors. So on that note, I'm going to pass the call over to Doug Loud.
Thanks, O&M. Thank you for having me today. Today we're going to talk about software and why you should even care about it. And the reason is what we're going to call leverage. The software business has incredible leverage in it if you can just get yourself positioned the right way in it. Now, for you to understand where I'm coming from with this, I'm unfortunately going to have to give you a little bit of history. A lot of you have been using your computers for a lot of years, so you may remember the olden days when you went to a store and you bought a box, and the box had floppy disks and a manual, and you put the disks in your computer and you hoped it got installed properly, and if it didn't, then you had to read the manual or try to call up some little company and find out what had happened. But the idea was, if you would buy their software and start to use it, it would save you lots of time and trouble, and if they sold a lot of copies, they'd make a lot of money. And the reason was what I'll call stage one leverage, which was they only had to write that program and get it to work one time. After that, they just made lots and lots of copies on the floppy disks. They printed the manual and they shipped it off to you. Now, if they were really smart and lucky and a commercial sort of an operation selling to corporations and government agencies, they would also have something called maintenance. The idea there was that as they made changes to the program, you would get them for free if you paid them a monthly maintenance charge. And in fact, often you would get the whole new release for free if you'd been paying monthly maintenance. Monthly maintenance, it turned out, was a wonderful thing. If you had a lot of users and you were getting that monthly maintenance charge, it more than covered any charges of maintaining the software, and indeed probably covered the cost of building the new software, plus giving you a nice profit. So a lot of companies got into the software business and tried to stay there. Then we started to get digitized. And why was that important? Because all of a sudden, you didn't have to print the manual anymore. You didn't have to maintain it. You could now download the software and with it the manual, brief stop along the way for a DVD that came inside of an empty big box. But pretty soon now, again, you had the software, you bought it, and you were paying the monthly maintenance, and people were using more and more software, hundreds and hundreds, thousands and thousands of seats. Just to be clear on this, we're not just talking about, various kinds of software that you've heard of that you use every day. We're also talking about the databases that lie underneath it and the operating systems. Some of you out there may be sitting on Windows 10 and remember what it took to get there, or using your Mac, which gets a periodic update. But all in all, that's all software. It's making all your systems work. and it's being used now by millions of users. And if you as a software company can get yourself into the position of being one of those millions of users and little monthly maintenance, it gets to be even better and better. Now we come to the world, which you're going to hear about in a little bit, where we have, things in the cloud, or SaaS, which stands for Software as a Service. That's where you don't know, you don't care how it works. You turn on your computer, you go to your browser. It might or might not quickly download a little quick software like some of the investment programs do. And then you're working in the cloud. You're getting your software as a service. Best of all, you're probably just subscribing to it. It hits your credit card every month. You don't know, you don't care. It works, it gives you what you want, which is the best of all worlds for you. And I'm happy to say the best of all worlds for the software company. Because now, as they get further into the SaaS model, they can have a monthly fee, a subscription. What does that do for them? Well, not only does it get them a subscription and a monthly fee, but gone are the days that your box costs $350. Now you might be paying $30 a month. That's $360 a year. Except you're going to use this software for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. So you're not paying just $350. You're paying 4 or 5 times that amount for what is effectively the same software with the occasional updates. All coming in electronically and painlessly. You're paying on your credit card. Works out very well for you and very well for the software company. The catch for the software company is they have to write software that you want, that you need. Now, for some of you who are saying, well, gee, all this SaaS cloud stuff sounds a little off-putting. Remember, you're already using it. What do you think your email is? What do you think going to Google is? The weather app on your phone. All this stuff is working the same kind of way. Now, for various economic reasons, you may not think you're paying for it on a monthly basis, but somewhere, somehow, somebody's paying for it some way, probably with some ads. Have you noticed those ads that show up in your email the minute you start looking for something out on one of the online stores like an Amazon or something? All getting paid for somehow. It's a huge business. But the secret for the software company is to create some software that you need. Now, I don't want to give away any of the interesting information you're going to see in the next presentation. But one of the things that you want to have is software that a specific group of people needs to use. Let's say accounting software or something like that. That then continues to make their lives easier. And then, as various new things happen, let's say you started out with just a simple checkbook program, and then you turned it into a general ledger kind of a system. And then you added on accounts receivable, an accounts payable module, inventory management, all sorts of things like that. Each of those little goodies gets added onto the software, possibly at a price, possibly not. Why? Because the more modules you're using, the more likely it is you're going to stay with that software, because it gets harder and harder for you to let go of the software, to change out the software until some major event occurs, like you change hardware systems. By the way, I left out of the history the good old days where if you got new versions of software, often you had to get a whole new computer. And I'm mentioning that now because when we're starting to talk about big corporations and government agencies using software on various numbers of seats, in the new world, you can charge by those seats. So we can add more and more seats to your subscription if you're the corporation or the agency. And that's fine. It gets approved by the controller. It gets paid every month. Everybody's happy. But gone now are the days of the fact that you hit this magic moment of, for the sake of argument, the 100th seat. And surprise, you have to buy a whole new server and network system to manage your slightly bigger system. This is all now just gone out over the cloud. It's being handled somewhere in space in what is referred to as the cloud. In reality, it's probably Amazon's AWS or Microsoft's Azure systems, or IBM has one. There's a number of companies providing software on the cloud. You don't care. You don't need to know. The important thing for you is to find good software companies who are going to have software that people need and want and basically can't let go of once they have it. Some of the companies you're going to see shortly, especially the next one, have very interesting software that's used by lots and lots of users, more and more users every day, but they're adding in things that people in today's world absolutely have to have. I can't help myself, I just have to add this in. The guys you're going to see next have a coronavirus tracker, something every agency has to have. Everybody's talking about this. let's keep track of the coronavirus. But the catch is, there aren't a lot of these programs lying around. And if you're some government agency that has to keep track of this in a small city somewhere, you're not going to write this yourself. You don't even know how. But your software provider shows up and says, here's another bolt-on, and click, there you got it, and now you can do your job and keep track of the coronavirus and those people who've been infected with it. This is very important. This is my own opinion, not that of O&M or anyone else's, but I'm afraid the coronavirus is with us for a while. It's going to come and go, and therefore paying attention to these sorts of things and the issues it raises on the side are going to be very important. And software is one of the few ways we can protect ourselves and go on ahead. I think you're going to enjoy the next presentation very much. And thank you, O&M, for having me.
Thank you, Doug, for a great introduction. We're now going to turn to our hosts. We have Silas Garrison, who's the Chief Executive Officer and Director of HealthSpace, on with us today. Silas is a tech entrepreneur, very seasoned, been in the business, had some great successes in his career. Currently serves as the company's Chief Technology Officer over the past 3 years. During that time, Silas oversaw the development and deployment of HealthSpace's premier product line, the HealthSpace CS Pro. This product line has constituted a significant amount of revenue and momentum growth for the company. Prior to joining HealthSpace in a full-time capacity, Silas designed and built the company's industry-first iPad and Android environmental health inspection apps. Silas has a vast amount of experience in various business verticals. He's consulted, worked with a variety of organizations ranging from Fortune 500 banks to sports media conglomerates. So he brings a wide-ranging set of skills and achievements to the role in leading the organization. I'm certainly quite impressed with Silas. And we're also pleased to have Ali Hakinzadeh. Ali Hakinzadeh, I've just obviously learned that name. Ali is the chairman of the board. He's also the director. Ali has 20 years of experience in the financial services industry and quite an impressive background. He brings a wealth of financial business knowledge to his role as chairman. Throughout his career, Ali has overseen and partaken in more than $1 billion in financing, mergers, and acquisition activities. Prior to his work with HealthSpace, he served as Director of Investment Banking at Canaccord Financial Corporation. And it's a real pleasure to turn the call over to the management of HealthSpace. Silas, turning it over to you.
Hey, thank you, David. And thank you, Doug, for the intro. So 1 second, bear with me, everyone, as I attempt to show my screen. So as the introduction, stated, I'm Silas Garrison. I'm the CEO of HealthSpace. I've been with the company since about 2016. I've got a lengthy track record of working with a lot of technology within the government space. And HealthSpace is, a software as a service company focused primarily into the state and local government realm. So as we get into this presentation, I'll be moving through the slides. This is just a snapshot of a few of our customers. We have over 500 government agencies all across North America utilizing our software platforms on any given day. This snapshot here has the logos of several of our agencies because we serve agencies both large and small, statewide agencies such as the state of Florida or the state of Virginia, all the way to small rural counties. That's really important to note as our software is applicable to agencies of all sizes. Which really gives us a lot of verticality inside of the government space to be able to sell to virtually any agency. So a bit about us is that we are, as a software company, working with government agencies to help them improve their workflows. So we digitize all of their information that has to do with regulating private industry or private businesses. So we work with these government agencies on a software as a service basis, as was mentioned. And these government agencies, typically, we work with environmental health departments. So environmental health is a subset of regulatory bodies that operate on a state and local level. And these are the folks that go in and license and inspect businesses ranging from restaurants to hotels, tattoo parlors, long-term care facilities. So there's a laundry list of businesses that are touched by the government agencies who utilize our software. And really, in short, the business process, which varies greatly within government. As you can imagine, there's no shortage of laws and regulations. And when you get down to the local level, those can change really rapidly. And so in short, though, the business process that our software digitizes is the government agency is responsible for, having the business operate within a health and safe manner. And the way that that happens is that the business fills out an application. And when they do so, the government reviews it, make sure that everything checks out okay. And upon subsequent approval, they will receive an invoice. That business will receive an invoice from the government agency that they have to pay in order to operate. Once they pay for that invoice, they then are able to open up. And once they open up, say like a restaurant, they are subsequently inspected numerous times a year. All of that information flows through our system. So accounting folks, back office, people who review the applications and the licensing process, all the way down to the field inspectors are utilizing our software to make their everyday lives easier and more efficient. We do this through our suite of products, which I'll touch on in just a moment. And as our suite of products is so powerful and flexible, this is one of the things that David touched on, is that, you bolt on one more thing, and then what happens is that you actually are able to expand who you can sell that software to. And in the case of us, we work a lot with environmental health departments, but we're now getting to other areas, departments of agriculture, which oversee the farms and the regulation of how we produce our food. Then we also are working with public health agencies, which oversee the communicable disease tracking. So we work with a lot of different types of government agencies, and that's one of the ways that we can expand the addressable market in which we sell into. So again, this touches a bit more on what I was just speaking on. And one of the things that is really important is that everything that we do in working with these government agencies touches a lot of private businesses. And so there's a lot of opportunity for us to capture opportunity within that segment, not just within the government, but also in the private sector. And I'll touch more on that in a moment. So these government agencies, as I just briefly overviewed, is that they are responsible for ensuring the health and safety of the general public. Whether you're dining at a restaurant, you want to know that it's safe, or you check your grandparent or your parent into a long-term care facility, you want to make sure that it's taken care of, that it's overlooked. And these government agencies are responsible for overseeing that health and safety aspect of everything that you come into contact and see within your given city or town. And so this produces obviously a lot of information, a lot of workflow. And so our government agencies that utilize our software are really looking to advance the technology status. So within the government realm, you kind of think sometimes archaic, you think maybe slow. And what really the picture behind that is that they don't always have the best-in-class offerings from a software standpoint to operate like a normal private business would. And so what we've done, and what I've done, spent my entire career doing, is really trying to transform the government space from a digital aspect. Our product suite, as we pinpoint here, is comprised of four main components, four main solutions. We have HS Cloud. HS Cloud is our enterprise cloud-based software. We just introduced this just a couple of years ago. And one of the things that I didn't touch on, but HealthSpace has been around for quite some time. In fact, HealthSpace got its start just in the late 90s. It's been around for about 20 years, or just over 20 years now. And it was built originally by two government folks that really saw a need for a digital solution. Now, as HealthSpace's life kept going and the business kept growing, the software started to become dated. And so that's when I came into the picture, having just developed the first iPad app for health inspectors to utilize. They were able to now, go into the field with an iPad app like you do to, play your games like Angry Birds, or, keep track of more serious elements within business. Now government could use the iPad for their regulatory work. And so HS Cloud, we just released 2 years ago, and that's when we started to hit a real inflection point on growth. HS Touch is the mobile app that I just spoke about. And My Health Department is a centralized portal that I'll touch on in just a moment. That is for the private businesses that are regulated by government to utilize. And HS Pay, which is our financial solution for transacting online and mobile payments. So I already gave a brief overview on HS Cloud, but really there's one selling point that matters the most, and it's what is making us really, really stand out. HS Cloud, as it stands, is what we call a self-serve product. When government agencies go out to adopt software or digital solutions, they usually go through a very lengthy deployment process. Virtually every vendor in the space that sells into government, and there are large vendors, multi-billion-dollar companies, when they sell into this space, their solutions are usually tailored towards heavy layers of customization that have to be done by a programmer. Let me translate that down into a little bit more simplistic language. When a government agency goes to deploy software, they have to spend an inordinate amount of time, weeks, months, detailing their business processes, and then shipping that information off to a vendor. And that vendor will then take that and turn it over to a set of developers, programmers, who have to actually engineer the code and the platform to suit the business needs. We flip that on its head. What we do is actually the regulatory process, whether it's the long list of laws or how they govern restaurants, how they govern schools, all of that information can be turned on with a click and tailored exactly to that regulatory body's needs with just a few simple steps. They can upload their laws via Excel, and away they go with a software platform that is very customizable to their exact needs. No two government agencies are alike. I think most people can understand that. And so whether you're, two different states, or you're across the border, or you're a province in Canada and you're a state in the US, your laws are not the same. The way you do business is not the same as a government agency. And so it's really important for the software that they utilize to be readily adaptable to that without having to get a developer involved. HS Touch, as I mentioned, it is our mobile app. It's one of the key drivers in our sales because it gives the government ability to not only use some of the most, the latest and greatest devices such as an iPad, it also allows them to conduct their inspections in an offline mode, meaning they don't have to have the internet. In our day of constant connectivity, there are still times when you might not have an internet connection, and that's a really big point for our HS Touch application. My Health Department, in simple terms, we call this the digital replacement for a government office. What it really means is that every piece of regulatory information you as a business owner might have to manage when it comes to government oversight, whether it be the inspections, the applications you have to fill out, or going online to pay for the required fees that you have to pay for, all of that information can live in this one centralized portal. And as our footprint continues to grow across North America and we gain more and more customers, we've turned this into a one-stop shop. So whether you are a small mom and pop coffee shop in Memphis, Tennessee, or you're a large franchise holder of McDonald's with locations across multiple states, from Florida to Virginia to Tennessee, you can go to this one portal, access all of your regulatory information, and pay for all of your regulatory fees with just one click. It's very seamless, it's very powerful. And what this does is it actually allows us to set up a future-looking relationship with the private sector. That these businesses have to be regulated by government and they have to interact and keep track of this regulatory information, and we make that seamless. And so by doing so, there are future opportunities for us to generate revenue through subscriptions, through upselling, through premium services or product add-ons, even potential corporate sponsorships or advertising revenue. So this is a big opportunity that we're looking towards in the future. HS Pay is our most recent business development and product development item. So as we see that these government agencies are collecting a lot of money through these required regulatory and licensing fees, what is astonishing is that government actually is collecting the majority of that money through paper means, paper check, cash. And so not only does this slow down the regulatory cycle, you have to wait for the check to clear, the bank deposit to come through. There's a lot of slowdowns and headaches that go through the paper shuffle. What we saw was a huge opportunity. And so we partnered with PayPal to be able to develop an online and mobile payment solution that allows these private business owners to go online and seamlessly pay, whether from a web browser or their phone, for the regulatory fees that they're required to pay. And in doing so, what we've been able to do is actually structure a relationship with PayPal whereby they charge us about 2.8%. As you can imagine, processing a credit card always comes with fees. So their charge to us is about 2.8%, and our charge back to the government agencies will be about 3.8% on every transaction. And what that means is that we have a 1% delta, a 1% of every single transaction that floats through this pipe that we can capture as top line revenue. There is a significant amount of revenue to be had through this platform. Our current customers, not even including some of the more recent sales that I'll get to, they collect in aggregate over $300 million a year US. So you can imagine that as government usually charges more money over time, and as economic systems grow, there's more money and more licensing fees that have be had. All of that money, as it flows through, we can capture 1% off the top. Now, as the world has changed dramatically over the past 3 months, contact tracing has become one of these things that has become front and center. Now, how HealthSpace got into contact tracing is kind of interesting. A lot of our government agencies are responsible for inspecting businesses such as restaurants, but they also utilize our platform for disease surveillance, mainly in the realm of food safety. So if you are a citizen and you get sick you get some gastrointestinal issues from eating at a restaurant, you can report that to your public health department. And when you do so, excuse me, I bought my computer. When you do so, the health department will keep track of that information through our system. And as more and more people may report getting ill, they then utilize our system to do the kind of investigative detective work to figure out, okay, did these folks eat at the same restaurant? Did they shop at the same grocery store? Maybe it was tainted produce. And so because they were already utilizing our system for a lot of that disease surveillance, investigative work, it was not a far fetch for us to leap into the world of COVID. So when it hit, we saw that our customers were becoming very distracted. These environmental health departments, which are not the same as public health departments. Public health is the parent organization over environmental health. Public health actually manages the citizen by citizen health aspects. So communicable diseases, disease surveillance, community health clinics, immunizations, those type of things are all run by the public health departments. And as our customers became more engulfed in the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw that there was maybe an opportunity for us to help. So we reached out to our customers and offered our platform to be used for COVID-19. And what they told us is that if you can actually automate or help us more efficiently track contact tracing, that would be a huge win for us. So with just very minimal effort, what we did is we pivoted our platform, literally a weekend's worth of development work, embedded an automatic text messaging engine. And what we had was a fully automated contact tracing solution that these public health departments can utilize for more effectively managing the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic. And immediately, that it already netted us a lot of attention and activity within the public health space. Again, these are not agencies that we previously sold to. We now have a new market that is ready to adopt a platform that they previously weren't even potentially aware of. And so what our contact tracing platform does is, contact tracing in simple terms is manual investigative work to figure out who may have come into contact with someone who tested positive, calling them on a daily basis for a period of 14 to 21 days to ask them questions. In the world which we live in, it doesn't take a lot of thought to figure out that takes a lot of time and a lot of manpower. And so what our platform does is it sends out automatic text and email alerts with a unique and secure link that those folks that may have come into contact with someone who tested positive can now fill out that daily survey digitally. All that information resides back in our secure cloud platform, HS Cloud, that they can then do more investigative work and reporting on, which gives them the ability to exponentially scale their contact tracing without having to hire hundreds and thousands of additional people that they may not have the ability to do. This is a snapshot of our historical revenue growth. I mean, as you can see, the revenue growth from 2017 to 19 was slightly upticking. Now, with the release of our HS Cloud Suite platform, and as I took hold of becoming CEO, I just became CEO in late 2018 of HealthSpace. We re-engineered our sales process. Not only did we release a new product, but we had to really rethink how we were going to sell it. And as you see in the red bars down there at the bottom, we've seen a lot of significant growth and some significant contracts come our way over the past 18 months. In fact, the majority of those down there at the bottom in the red bars actually came and have been closed in the past 12 months or less. And as our sales have really upticked and word has spread, we've seen even the likes of San Francisco, the beating heart of Silicon Valley, want to purchase our software. We went through a lengthy bid process with them through a request for proposal or RFP, where they determined that we were not just the most premier vendor, but the one that they definitely wanted to utilize for the long haul. Now, I should note that all of these dollar figures that you see are quoted in USD. Everything that we do is reported in USD. And these are representative of, in the red, a 5-year total contract value. We always sign long-term contracts with our customers. Generally, they're 5 years in terms of long-term agreements. So what a lot of people want to know is just how big can this be? So we talk a lot about government. Government is big, right? And so in the US alone, government spends over $100 billion a year on IT and technology. So to whittle that down to smaller bite-sized chunks of what we can capture, the environmental health market alone is $120 million a year. If we were to saturate 100% of it and get every win, in the US alone, it would represent over $120 million in annual recurring revenue. Annual recurring revenue being that big benchmark that most SaaS companies are valued by. That is a significant dollar figure that we can chase just within environmental health. But then there's other areas that we're also targeting. Code enforcement, another area of state and local government that has the exact same workflow process of application, inspection, license, etc. That's even bigger, $175 million worth of opportunity. Departments of Agriculture, and now we're even working with public health departments, which even has larger funds behind it than these two agencies. As our growth has been started to really uptick, this is a snapshot of what our pipeline looks like. So we started off with, when I took over as CEO, we had a rather anemic pipeline, about $1 million in near-term opportunity when I took over in late 2018. By the fall of 2019, I issued some guidance that our sales pipeline had swelled to $7 million in near-term opportunity. By January of this year, we had closed 2/3 of that. And now our sales pipeline is well above $14 million in multi-year opportunities. What that represents is not just the word of mouth, but the way we've been able to engineer our sales process. And one of the things, again, I touch on ARR or annual recurring revenue a lot. We started the year this year, January 2020, at 3.2 million US in ARR. By the latter half of this year, we're projecting that we'll be well over 5 million in ARR with just our near-term sales pipeline. And what we're seeing is that now that we've introduced contact tracing, the contact tracing actually gives us a foothold into a new agency, public health. And we project that by sometime next year, we'll have enough sales opportunity that this sales pipeline, which is $14 million in only environmental health opportunities, could be equal to or greater than in public health in terms of how much sales opportunity. So right now, we're looking at a compound growth effect in sales opportunities and contract wins over the next 12 months and beyond. This is just a snapshot of our capital structure, basic shares outstanding and the fully dilution picture. We're right at about 278 million shares total. We also have a convertible debenture on the books that comes due this September, 795,000 Canadian, and we intend on paying that out of cash flow. But that exercises at 10 cents Canadian in terms of a conversion price. So whether it pays out of cash flow or converts, we see it being comfortable paid off by September. This is just a snapshot of our management and directors. Obviously, Ali is on the call with me. He works directly alongside me to guide a lot of the business and as well as the public market strategies. I myself, and then Zula, who is our CFO, and then the three other, directors, Joseph, Mr. Redcliffe, and Alnesh. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Q&A.
Thank you. Thanks, Silas. Very well presented. Well done. We're going to start today with Chesley Morton. Chesley.
Hi, David. Great presentation. I appreciate the fact that we've got this new company and I'm coming up to speed on it, but I don't have any questions at this time.
Thanks for being on the call, Chesley. We're going to turn to, let's turn to Eric Sheffels. Eric, question today for Silas or Ali?
Yeah, I had a question that I emailed in. It was just regarding if you've done any work towards the code enforcement vertical, if you've been working with any building departments or TSSA, ESA, that kind of thing.
Yeah, as in government, one of the things I'll touch on is we are working on closing one of our first sales in that arena, and it's really big to have a first adopter. Government likes to, see proven track record. While we've worked with a lot of government agencies in the environmental health realm, it takes a little bit more legwork to land that first contract, which we are actively in the works for right now. And so as we close that out and start to deploy that in the code enforcement realm, it'll give us kind of a use case to be able to expand more greatly on our marketing and sales front.
Good, thanks.
Thanks for your question. We'll turn to Doug Loud.
Yeah. Could you go into a little bit about how you sell it and get paid? I mean, are you doing it by seats? Are you doing an upfront payment plus seats and maintenance? And how do these governments pay you, and are they good at it?
Great questions. So I'll start with, first, how do we get paid? So we charge on a per user seat basis. Right now, we typically charge our rate card is about $1,500 a year per user. And a user is, a government person, a government employee who's going to log in and utilize the software. So we have, user deployments that are anywhere from just 3 or 4 people, very small rural town, all the way up to, hundreds, if even thousands of users that are going to utilize it. So we charge about $1,500 a year. And then we also charge an upfront component. So the upfront component allows us to recoup the cost it takes to deploy the software. There's a lot of time that goes into working with the customer, making sure that everything works right, that their requirements are met. And so we charge an upfront fee to essentially account for what it looks like kind of consulting hours, essentially. So in the instance of San Francisco, we charge them $650,000 upfront to set up the software. Part of that is because we had to do a lot of integrations, a lot of work to, integrate the software with like their tax assessor office and other elements. And then for the ongoing maintenance, they will be paying us about $250,000 a year in perpetuity as long for the contract. And one of the things that I did as I took over as CEO was also make sure that that fee is not static year over year. So in the instance of City of San Francisco, they're starting out at about $250,000, but then they're going to be charged a 6% compound increase year over year to kind of keep up with inflation and the recurring costs that come with that. And so that's the general breakdown. In terms of margins on those, because I know a lot of people ask that, we're looking to structure it that we'll have about 80% margin on the maintenance contracts long-term, gross margin, which is pretty typical for good SaaS companies. And then about 30% margin on the upfront fees, because that's more of like a mini consulting firm within the company. As far as your other question, are government customers good at paying? We have never had a government customer that is not paid. With government agencies being able to always have their budget set kind of years in advance, it's typically not an issue once you enter in an agreement. They have those funds encumbered or set aside to pay us. So it's never historically, and don't foresee it being an issue for them to, not pay their bills.
That's great. Do you customize each installation to the city, or do you have a standard product you roll out and have a customization module built into it so you don't have to maintain it all?
Yeah, it's the same product, no matter if it's a public health agency utilizing it for contact tracing or a large city, running their food inspections through it. It's the same product. Now, it varies in terms of how they see it. You upload your specific laws and rules, so the platform, the product, does conform itself to the specific use case, but at the end of the day, it's the same software, the same underlying, engine, so to speak. And so there's only one place that we have to do R&D and development work on, but the customer sees a much more configured or customized version of that when they log in.
That's really great. I commend you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for your questions, Doug. Oh, we're going to turn to Scott now. We have questions from the audience. Scott?
Yes, we do indeed. I want to thank everyone for sending in questions. The first one today is, what percentage of your estimated revenue for the next 12 months do you see coming from the COVID-19 tracing app? In other words, how dependent are you on the success in this sector in comparison with your traditional applications?
So two-phase question. So I'll take the percentage one first. So over the next 12 months, we see somewhere in the neighborhood, and right now I should preface this by saying that the world has changed rapidly, and it continues to evolve with the way that the COVID-19 pandemic has struck. One of the things that is coming out of contact tracing, and really the more broad term that's used in government that you'll see in more of our marketing materials, is disease surveillance. Disease surveillance is going to be a massive opportunity for multiple companies, and us included, because the federal government is pumping in hundreds of millions of dollars in the form of grants that are going to be utilized for digitizing, disease surveillance and being more proactive and prepared. So from a revenue projection standpoint, it's really hard to account for on a percentage level basis. I would say that we have a near-term opportunity, right around probably over $1 million in potential opportunity that we can see. But there's likely, as we get into the latter half of the year, as grants become available, there's likely to be well above that as we head into 2021. So as far as traditional business versus contact tracing or disease surveillance, really it's not about one or the other. For us, in no shape or form are we relying on that as a way to accelerate the company in a different way. Really what you're looking at is that our platform is a self-serve, cloud-based enterprise solution that doesn't really exist in terms of the competitive marketplace in the government realm. And it's really important to touch on that, because what we want to do is not, pigeonhole ourselves to contact tracing, disease surveillance, or environmental health. What we aim to be is kind of like the Salesforce for government, where Salesforce transformed the CRM space by offering a highly powerful self-serve configurable cloud solution in the CRM space. They were able to capture companies large and small of varying industries because they did it with a specific mindset. And we are doing the same thing in the government space. So our core components in terms of sales drivers, environmental health, still very much active, still very much alive, and we are aggressively attacking that space. But really the long-term vision and growth is to ubiquitously be the one cloud provider that everybody thinks of in the government space, whether they're public health, code enforcement, environmental health, or ones that we haven't even identified yet. So that's really where we're going with this in terms of sales opportunity and growth.
Just to be clear, basically they have to have your main platform in order to get coronavirus or disease checking or whatever else it might be.
That's correct. It's one product, it's one platform. How you choose to utilize it as a government agency is up to you.
Great.
Thank you. Next question is, what is the status of the contracts that were awaiting finalization prior to when COVID delayed the process? Are those deals expected to be finalized or simply delayed, or are any of them now sidelined indefinitely? Also, for the contracts where contract tracing is not an incentive, what are the new timeframes for finalization? It's quite a mouthful.
Indeed, it is a mouthful. So first and foremost, I'll go ahead and state that there are no contracts or sales opportunities, no matter what phase of deal that they are in, that have been completely sidelined. Everything is still very much active. But there was delays that were introduced into the process. Government is, first and foremost, not really used to working from home. And most folks have been having to work out of their home office and away from the government buildings, which really introduces a huge snafu into, how did they get their job done? So there has been what we project about a 90-day delay on most of the ones that were very near term. And from a what is the risk of any of them falling off? At this point, none that we can project. Now, the world is rapidly changing, so the things could change again. But as of right now, we've seen about a 90-day delay on ones that we expected to close in about the April timeframe. But we've also started to see sales activity pick back up. More demos are being scheduled, contracts and quotes are being sent. So we see that things are starting to return to a little bit normal. And I think it just, a lot of government agencies had to get their bearings in the changing dynamics. So I know that there was one more question on the back of that, and I'm kind of blanking on what it was.
So for the contracts where contract tracing is not the incentive, what are the new timeframes for finalization?
So the timeframes are, at best guess right now for most of them, delayed about 90 days. And so some of them, it varies, right? But right now we're still working on a pathway that by the latter half of this year, we'll have closed the majority of that sales pipeline by end of year. So not as significant in the way of delays that you might expect given the totality of this pandemic. As far as contact tracing goes or disease surveillance, there's two things about that. One of the things was we recently closed or announced a sale with Mecklenburg County in North Carolina. And what that brought about was two things. Is that had been kind of sidelined, you can say, or delayed because everybody was busy, covering the COVID-19 pandemic in their office. The second thing that it did is it just made harder to make real-time decisions for them. But as they learned that we had a disease surveillance module, what they were able to do is two things. Is one, they were able to encumber more emergency funds so they could utilize it for what they originally intended it for, which was on-site septic management, and then also use it for disease surveillance. So disease surveillance or contact tracing becomes a tip of the spear sales utility. So it's not just about the revenue that will be generated because of contact tracing. It's also how it's utilized in the sales cycle. They can get federal grants now because they can say we're going to utilize it for disease tracking, but then they can also pivot that same platform, the same product that we sell, to utilize it in other areas, thus making the sale larger. So it's really dovetails perfectly into what our sales strategy already was, and just gives us one more kind of feather in our quiver to be able to attack it.
Excellent, good answer. Next question is, and before we go into this question, I did want to mention that we have uploaded the presentation to the handouts portion of the GoToWebinar control panel. I know that there are some appendix in there that you may want to look at. You can download the presentation for yourself if you'd like. But moving on to this question, Silas mentioned a $300 million market available to HS Pay and capturing a percentage of that. When can shareholders expect those revenues to begin coming in?
We expect those revenues to begin coming in this summer. So, we announced HS Pay sometime last year as a new initiative, and we have taken our time to deploy that and for multiple reasons. One, security and securing the funds was one of the important aspects, making sure that the product development was tight. But then the other aspect was that you now have to go to these government agencies and get them to go through multiple procurement cycles to get sign off to be able to use such a platform. It's a different sales cycle, a little bit different sales methodology that we have to use, but we do fully expect that to be up and running and generating some revenue this summer.
Great. Two more questions. This one is, will you need to raise any more cash this year or next?
So at this current time, we just closed the financing about 2 months ago. At this point, we are in a comfortable position from a cash standpoint to continue operations and continue, precipitous growth through the end of the year. I can never really fully project that we won't ever raise money again, but at this time, there's no intentions or plans or really need to for the foreseeable future.
Great. And the final question I have from the field, unless anybody wants to write one in real quick, is, will you be moving off the OTC pink markets?
It is something that we are currently just looking into from a cursory level. We have no plans or intentions at this time, though we are aware that there are certain limitations that come with being on the pink in terms of what trading apps and on platforms it's offered through. But there's a lot that goes into those kind of regulatory changes. So it's something that is currently just being looked at, and we're in discovery phase right now.
Great. Well, David, that's all the questions from the field.
Thank you, Scott. Let's unmute our panelists and just make sure if anyone
Actually, I'm
question.
sorry, one just came in. Let me just
Great.
ask this before we do that. Thank you everyone for writing in your questions. We appreciate it. This question is, do you have any thoughts of expanding outside of North America?
At this time, we're not intently invested in it. It is a possibility, but the North America market, especially in the US alone, is so rich and underutilized and undersaturated that the time and investment to try to pivot into another, continent or country, really continent in this instance, would be a mistake. Not to say that we're not interested in opportunities and don't have maybe some that we're looking at, but we are investing all of our sales and marketing opportunities in the very market-rich world we live in both Canada and the US.
Yeah, good answer,
Great.
Simon. It's all about focus. It has to
Indeed.
be focus. There's just such a big universe out there. We're going to unmute everyone from the panel. If anyone would like to follow up with a question, you're certainly welcome to do so now. All right. That means you've given a very thorough presentation, Silas, and answered all the questions. So I'm going to turn it back to you for closing remarks.
All right, thank you, David. I just want to say and express my appreciation for everybody who attended. I take every single shareholder who either considers or already has invested in our company very seriously. So I just want to thank you for your time and allowing me to present. Thank you to O&M Partners for putting this together. I always love the ability to talk about our company and really what it means to be a digital provider within the government space. It's something I have a deep passion for and thoroughly enjoy the work that we do. And we have an immense opportunity before us that we're just taking one step at a time to capture it in a significant way. So thank you all for attending. As questions are, I think that we left an email address there on the screen. Feel free to reach out with any questions that you may have. Always happy to answer investor and shareholder questions. Thank you, everyone.
And O&M will also be following up for feedback. I want to thank Silas today for presenting, and also want to thank everyone for your attendance and wish you a very pleasant evening. Thanks again. Bye-bye.